Hi, thanks for having me here. I really appreciate it. I'm a technologist in the education space, and I'm here to tell you about Proclaim.io, which we have listed here as a persistent, verifiable, and personal proof of credentials. Oh, wait, hold on. How do I move on here? There we go. Okay. So, many of us start our education in a formal way, right? Sometimes we go on to secondary, post-secondary. That's only a small portion of our lives. Learning is lifelong. We continue doing it through the jobs. Maybe we're doing it online. Maybe we're teaching ourselves. And also, it's important to acknowledge, I think, that not everybody has equal access to quality education, right? And so when you think about education as not being just about the job you're going to get, but also as improving your quality of life, but also as an agent for a social change. And for as many possibilities there are to learn, there are all these credentials. And these credentials have a lot of assumptions tied to them. And some of those assumptions are correct and some of them are wrong. Who's to say what someone really knows if they have a degree in computer science, for instance? Right? Who's to say they know more than somebody who is self-taught? Also, these credentials are paper or a PDF. Maybe there's a digital representation, but they don't contain any sort of rich data that accurately represents like what we know or what we can do. So imagine credentials that can accurately represent your skills and experiences, exist because you decide they should exist, are viewable because you want them to be seen, and they can be verified and trusted. So I'm working with a woman named Carla Casilli on a project called Proclaim.io, and we're picturing it as like a phone app or a web app, or maybe a desktop app, really, that can store and share your credentials. So blockchaining. This is a word that I'm rather fond of. I learned it from Trent. I don't know if you still use this term, but I really like how it describes BigchainDB and IPDB. And it gives a good perspective on where we started with badges and digital credentials and Proclaim. So when I first met Trent, it was at the W3C and Web and Blockchain workshop back in Cambridge about 1.5 years ago. And I've been working in Open Badges for about 7 years. And Open Badges was a data specification that Mozilla created that describes learning skills and achievements that can be done anywhere at any time. But there are technical vulnerabilities with Open Badges. They're hosted on web servers, and they're hard to trust, right? They're mutable, basically. So we went there, we formed a group called Badge Chain to explore these vulnerabilities, and we thought, oh, blockchain, this could be our answer, right? We didn't really know that much about it. We went to this, we made this proposal, and we went to the workshop. And I met Trent, and Trent was like, oh wait, everything you want to do, we can do that. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, all of it. And also you can use like IPFS too. I was like, oh, wait a minute. So we started looking at it, and we realized that it does do what we want to do, because it also not only makes it permanent, like the data permanent and immutable, but it's a database, right? It's queryable. And so it's verifiable. So that solves that shortcoming for Open Badges. But then also you can do things like add data to it. So then all of a sudden credentials are these living things. They're not just the stamp of something you did. It's like, oh, I keep learning. Oh, there's more and more. And look, here's more that I've done. So it becomes a living record of what you can prove that you know. So, bear with me here. Oh yes, also, by the way, Open Badges contain evidence, right? Personalized evidence. So this evidence could be photos, videos, code that you've written, and it's personalized to be stored. So in that way, we would use IPDB to store the data, but then IPFS to store the evidence of your learning. So this is a big deal. So after we figured out, okay, we have this data storage, this is going to work, it's going to be okay, who decides this data goes up there? I mean, why should the institutions decide this? And we have this trusted technology where this data can be, right? And if it's going to be permanent and immutable, then it should be accurate. So then it should be the credential earner who is the final arbitrator of this data going up there. So as part of Proclaim's efforts, we're saying, all right, there's a negotiation between the organization or whoever's giving the credential and the earner, and they agree to it. And even once they agree to it, They don't have to store it if they don't want to, but they can. And then once they do, they should be able to decide who can see it. And not even just the credential, but each piece of evidence. Right? Each piece of, like, maybe a photo should be private or video should be public. They should be able to store it and decide that and then share with whoever they want. Data rich. So I've been talking about open badges, because that's where I've been working this whole time. But another one of the shortcomings of open badges is that it doesn't really have that much data. The criteria that describes the earning is text or a URL. So it's not very rich data. So Carla and I have been advising on this project in the States that's now going global called the Credential Engine Registry. And what they're doing is they're building an open source public registry of credential data that describes the credentials, not the earned one, but describes like how you can earn it. And they have over 200 properties that can describe what each credential type is, the name of the credential, location, cost, competency alignment. I mean, it's a huge data set, it's a huge data library, and it's RDF compatible and also aligned with schema.org. So now we have this potential to have this data set that can entirely describe what credentials are. So that's pretty great, right? This also makes it possible that we couldn't do before. That big list of credentials that I showed you, all those different types, you can compare and contrast. So you can say, oh, well, look at all of this data about these badges. Look at all this data about these micro-credentials. Look at these degrees. How can you compare those? Like, what is the value of those? So if Proclaim says, okay, this is who the earner is, and here's their evidence, but then it also links to that data, not only does every earner have a representation of what they've done, but potentially you have a huge data set. You can take the earner's identities out of what happened. So suppose at some point you have, a bunch of coders who've been teaching themselves for years, and they have some credentials, they've done some online, and it turns out that they actually know more than people who got a degree and paid a lot of money. And that changes educational equality, right? And so although it sounds like, oh, it's data, it's getting jobs, actually that's the point of all of it. Oh wait, hold on a second. Okay, real quick. These are problems we're facing. So we have the CER, the Credential Engine Registry, that's defining the credentials in the data structure. But it's going to take a while to get that data in there, and that's not a technical problem, that's a human problem. Right, so they are in sandbox mode, and they're starting to take on partners now. If you're interested in this, you can look up credreg.net and sign up as a partner. The sooner the better, because the more we learn now, the better the data structures will get over time. Another problem is, why would organizations want to store their data on IPDB? Like, why don't they want to keep it siloed? Some of them have business models based on this data. We're thinking about that, and we're talking to a lot of organizations about it, and a lot of them get it. A lot of them think like, yeah, we don't want to host that data. That's really great. And some won't, and so that's going to be a struggle for some time. The privacy paradox, which we hear a lot about, where most people really care about their data and the privacy of their data, but they still give it away. And that's one of the selling points of Proclaim, right, is us being able to say you can protect your own data. And when we go to folks and we say, hey, you have these credentials and you can protect it, they're like, what does that even mean? It's not even a consideration. So I think we all really do understand that there's some education that we have to do about data privacy. And then the last part is key management. We've thought of some things about this, but it's tough, right? Your common user doesn't even know what a private key is. So somehow we need to be able to work with them so that we can educate them so they can understand it, but also allow them to have trust in us and how it all works. So these are our considerations, the things we're working on. We're moving towards an MVP, and we're looking for some funding for it. And if you're interested, this is how you can reach us. And if you'd like to help, we'd be all for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Kerri. I see a burning question in the back, and that's addressed to you.
Wow.
Hey, thanks for the talk. I was wondering if you've given any consideration to having something like the open badges system for AI credentials as well?
Can you say more?
Something like accreditation of certain propensities or skills for AI, however that would be defined, but like or human or AI working together within like the open badges or within the Proclaim system.
Yeah, so I don't think open badges on their own will provide enough data to do that, but a system like this could over time. Because part of what I didn't mention with the credential engine registry is that there are taxonomies and the competency alignments, and there's some very specific data that could be used for that. So if you have a whole rich data set, I think it could be used for AI, and that'd be a perfect use case for it. And when Trent was talking about oceans yesterday, I was thinking about that too. Like, how could we use that? Yeah, it's a good question.
One question here in the front.
I already have the microphone, so I will
Yeah.
get myself in the front line. I'm very happy that there's another startup like yours working on certificates and the education topic. I think there are one or two others in the world which are also having, even the MIT did some stuff with open certs, and I'm also working on a product which will provide the step before that. So I think it would be super interesting, even if we all leave this conference later, if we would at one point in a couple of years maybe get a certificate for this, or like a badge that we have been here and listened to all these great talks. And for me, in the first place now, it's a question to you: how plug and play will be your infrastructure you are building, and how can like MOOCs or platforms like ours who maybe provide courses or stuff like this, peer learning, use your service to issue certificates?
Yeah. So that's what we've been thinking a lot about that, and there's two ways that we're thinking about. One is, I guess we'll just call it like sort of an issuer API, where say you give a credential to someone on your platform and your user, your earner, could click on it and then send it through to the system. They'd have to register first, we think. Another way could be a direct API service behind the scenes, and then some negotiation happens on the app between the organization and the earner. So one could be acceptance on your platform, and one could be acceptance in the Proclaim app itself. Did that answer your question? Cool.
Thanks.
One more question, yeah?
Yeah, so I'm really interested in the description you gave of it being a living record of what you can prove that you know. So about 20 years ago, I did a history degree, and I've probably forgotten about 95% of what I studied on that. But I think that it profoundly affected the way I think, and I think there's things in my practice now, even as a CTO, that I go back to, and particularly around critical thinking. And I was just wondering how the platform, if at all, how it kind of dealt with the kind of degradation of skills, or the kind of mutation of skills, or the kind of these things that aren't quite like I can program Python, or I know how this algorithm works, but more these kind of slightly more nebulous things like sort of critical thinking, or stuff where you think, yeah, I know this affected me, and I know it's part of how I want to present myself to an employer or to an organisation to say, I think I can give you some value, but it's not quite as kind of as tangible as yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't have a great answer for you, but I'll tell you some thoughts that I've had about it. Part of the living record could not just be maybe you adding things, but it could be things like endorsements from other people. It could be your own commentary. It's just that you could keep adding more and more information to it, and it should be dated, I think, to show when it all happens. So some of it will still be left to the perception of the consumer. Right? There's no way of getting around that, but the more data we can provide, certainly is more than we have now. So it's a start somewhere. But I think that's where we're thinking a little bit. I'm sorry?
I think it's a great idea.
Thank you.
I think it's going to be good for you. Sorry, I was just saying, I think it's a great. I think what you're proposing is a great idea, and I think I think the fact that it encourages you to actively reflect on your practice is going to help you as an individual, and also help other practitioners.
Yeah, I really believe that. We're told we have to learn these things to get these jobs, right? But beyond that, isn't it that we want to personalize our own life experiences and discover our own pathways? And if there are other people who are doing things and we're impressed with how they've led their lives and how they've learned, well, maybe we could model our pathways after that. But there's really no way to figure that out, right? So maybe we can start building out some kind of the community source data set that actually shows that. So, we could do that for each other.
Thank you, Kerri.